DiscerningHearts.com presents Inside the Pages, insights from today's most compelling authors. I'm your host, Kris McGregor, and I'm delighted to be joined by Father Robert Spitzer, who is the former president of Gonzaga University. He is the founder and president of the Magis Center, dedicated to public education on the relationship among physics, philosophy, and faith. He is also the president of the Spitzer Center, which delivers cultural development curricula to companies and faith-based organizations. His other books include Finding True Happiness, The Soul's Upward Yearning, and Healing the Culture. With Father Robert Spitzer, we go inside the pages of God So Loved the World, Clues to Our Transcendent Destiny from the Revelation of Jesus. We now begin part 2 of our discussion with Father Spitzer, recorded in his offices at the Magis Center, located in Garden Grove, California. Father, they get to that point to respond to that calling, that sacred. They begin to experience. They've asked the questions. The Shroud of Turin. That they're in awe. It's awesome, and they feel spiritual response. When's the next step to understand God's nature, and that next step? Why it's important to be a Christian, to encounter Jesus.
Yeah, there are, unfortunately, all the evidence in the world, right, the scientific evidence and the philosophical evidence, basically can only get you to a unique, intelligent creator, or in philosophy, a unique, intelligent, conscious, unrestricted act of thinking, which is the creator of all else that is. Now, you can get to that philosophically or scientifically, but once you're there, it's not going to answer the other questions, right? Like, does God really care about you? Is there really a heaven? How do you get there? Is there really a hell? How do you avoid it? Is there really, a set of moral principles that moves in one direction rather than another direction? Does God redeem our suffering? How does He redeem our suffering? Why does He allow us to suffer? Is there real grace? Does God inspire us? Does He guide us? Does He protect us? Right? All these questions, which are what I call questions of the heart, they can't be answered by even the best science and the best philosophy. You can get to an intelligent creator, but does he have a heart? Einstein thought God was an intelligent creator, but he didn't think he had a heart, right? I mean, Aristotle didn't think God had a heart, right? He just thought, oh, he's just a huge unrestricted act of thinking, and why would he care about us? We're idiots, so he just thought God just gave us some life to entertain him, and that's enough of that. He couldn't be bothered with more boredom from us. Whereas, of course, we don't have Aristotle didn't have a definitive answer to that question. Only way you're going to get to that answer is by revelation. God is going to have to come and reveal Himself to us. When we do science or philosophy, we can use the techniques of reasonable and responsible rational inquiry to get to the facts. But then once you've got the facts about God, then you're going to have to find revelation. Now, God hasn't left us bereft of evidence for where the revelation came from. But the one thing is we all have to believe that God's going to reveal Himself to us. Otherwise, it'd be an utterly cruel act, right? To give you the rational evidence to believe in Him and His intelligence, right? And then you ask all these questions about suffering, about prayer, about heaven, about hell, so forth and so on. You ask all these questions, but I'm not going to tell you, right? No God who at least has given us the desire for perfect truth, love, goodness, beauty, and home, emphasis on the love, perfect love. No God who gave us the desire and the awareness of perfect love, perfect goodness, and perfect home, and perfect beauty, and perfect truth is going to leave us bereft of a revelation to answer those questions. So it's got to be out there. Now, there's truth in in all world religions, right? There's a wonderful article written by Friedrich Heiler that says there are 7 common elements of all the world's greatest religions, and he delineates all those 7 elements. And of course, some religions emphasize one more than another, and so forth. But be that as it may, beyond those 7 things, is there a fulfillment of revelation that goes beyond this, that shows the radical nature of who God is? And the answer is yes. And it's the Christian religion, because the Christian religion alone has Jesus proclaiming to be the Son of God, who's come to be with us out of unconditional love and to reveal to the world who the Father is, namely unconditional love, like the Father in the prodigal son parable. It is Jesus alone who defines agape in this incredibly beautiful way, the Beatitudes, right? Blessed are the poor in spirit, that's to say the humble-hearted, right? Blessed are the meek, the gentle-hearted. Blessed are those who are hungering for righteousness, right? The salvation of our souls, the salvation of other souls. Blessed are those who are merciful, right? The forgiving and the compassionate, right? The parable of the Good Samaritan. Blessed are those who are peacemakers, and even blessed are those who are pure, authentic of heart. He's telling us what love is in a profound way that's never, ever been, done before, right? And of course, when we look at this, revelation of not only the heart of God as unconditional love, the heart of Jesus in his definitive act of self-sacrifice on the cross as unconditional love, and the definition of love, all of a sudden, I got to tell you, my own life, my heart just quaked. I just thought, this is the truth. Unconditional love is the truth. So that perfect love is perfect truth, and perfect truth is perfect love, and perfect truth and love is perfect goodness and beauty, and so forth. So for all intents and purposes, it was that kind of moment in my heart where I really began to believe, if this is the message of Jesus, which it is, which is why I wrote this book, God So Loved the World, Clues to Our Transcendent Destiny from the Revelation of Jesus, then count me in, because there isn't any other religion that does anything like this. I mean, it builds upon a common foundation, as Friedrich Heiler has articulated it. But at the same time, Christianity is unique in the idea of perfect, unconditional, and unrestricted love, and the call to it and the definition of it. So it's in that spirit, I myself began to start take my faith in the church really seriously. And when that happened, I started reading the New Testament. And it occurred to me at this juncture, hey, wait a minute. These gospel writers, they're not trying to sell me anything. They're not trying to get me to be a Christian. They're trying to save my soul. And the way I know they're not trying to sell me something and instead to save my soul is because they're giving me really hard things. I'm going to have to take up my cross and follow. I'm going to have to, be a person who is devoted, to looking for a life of authenticity. I'm going to have to be a person who is literally going to spend himself in trying, to be meek. I didn't want to be meek, I don't want to be gentle of heart, but this is what I was being called to. And I began to think, hey, if someone is interested enough not to sell me something, tell me to take up my cross and follow him, to give me the straight, scoop on what love really is, and to call me to this, and not sanitize it to make it really easy for little Bobby to embrace. If this is what these gospel writers are doing, and they're reflecting the true heart of Jesus, count me in. I like this gospel. I like the gospel because of the message of love, but I also like the gospel because it's the hard message of love. And love is not easy. It's not just a romantic feeling. It's got a lot of difficulty in it. But at the same time, what's at the end of the journey that's not easy? Why, authenticity in the truth. I mean, why, real love that's not, obscured by our narcissism and by our self-worship and so forth. I mean, we're going to get to authenticity in love, authenticity in truth, and authenticity in goodness. And that's going to not only purify the love, it's going to purify the joy. And if that's the case, I'm thinking to myself, hey, okay, is it worth the price of admission to go with these Christian guys who are not going to sell me something easy, but give me the truth about where I have to go to get to pure eternal joy in the unconditionally loving heart of God? If that's what it is, then count me in. There's only one other question once you embrace that. If you like the gospel writers, well, what church community are you going to belong to? Because at the end of the day, you're going to have to take a community, right? You're going to have to find a place where, as I said before, there's 100 interpretations for so many of the passages of the New Testament. Love them all. But I didn't consider myself to be the guru capable of making the final discernment. I mean, honestly, I'm a reader. I'm a thinker. But I just looked at myself as completely inadequate. And it's the final stage of my own conversion back to the Catholic Church. Not conversion back, but I was kind of going to Mass, but half-heartedly. But going into the church with kind of a full-bore, desire to belong to it. I mean, what happened to me is I began to see, hey, I not only need a church to interpret the truth for me, but wait a minute. If Jesus had made this revelation, and he had anticipated that this was going to be the case, that even with scriptures, even with the oral tradition, even with all these other things, we were all going to be in a fog of potential interpretations. Wouldn't he have initiated a church himself and an authority source to make it work?
Your witness is such a compelling one, Father Spitzer, and as those who have traveled the same journey that you are on, or something close to that, they're all moving up that mountain. Mm-hmm. There is such an important part of how God designed us that we can't take for granted, and that's our free will. And he has given us the opportunity to choose not to make that journey, mm-hmm. and to move there. And for those of us who have experienced that transformative encounter with Christ, mm-hmm. how important is it to also help people understand the consequences of not choosing that? And I'll be more specific. Mm-hmm. When do we start talking about hell?
Well, the Catholic Catechism defines hell as a definitive self-exclusion from God and the blessed. And they call it a state of definitive self-exclusion from God and the blessed. Now, that's a big, chunk. And in my book, God So Loved the World, I explain that statement. I pull it apart piece by piece. The one thing I want to emphasize right here is that God gave us free will because he wanted our love to be our own. He didn't want it to be the result of a computer program that he had, as it were, installed in us to do loving behaviors. And here's the problem. If your love is going to be your own, you have to be able to choose an unloving behavior, an unloving intention, an unloving attitude. Now, if you don't have the capacity to choose unloving things, hateful things, selfish things, self-idolatrous things, right? Mm-hmm. Forget it. Your love will never be your own. All you'll have is a program inside you to do loving behaviors. And don't worry, you'll never do anything unloving in your whole life because you can't. But then again, you just be a divine robot. And that wasn't good enough for God. He wanted to create creatures in his own image and likeness, with the same freedom of will, with the same capacity for authentic love, that we would choose and embrace over against the possibility of egocentricity, narcissism, self-worship, and all domination and all the other kinds of distractions that we have to authentic love, right? Authentic love is gift of self. Authentic love is wanting to make a difference to somebody or something beyond myself, not just to leave a legacy of goodness in the world, but because people need it. And the legacy of love is always a legacy towards salvation in the unconditional love of God. So being, that that's the case, then what we're dealing with, God has to give us his freedom. So at all times then, we are always confronted with something that's going to be profoundly selfish or profoundly, giving to others. That's going to worship ourselves or going to worship the true God. That's going to dominate others or be respectful and loving of others. And it's always, right? There's the either or is always part of our lives. Always. Now, Jesus doesn't go around, of course, he talks about hell as wailing and grinding of teeth, as being left outside. And you look at that and you go, wow, is Jesus threatening us with hell? Is he using the old fear tactic, of you better, live up to your religious obligations or you're going down, right? No, that's not what Jesus is doing at all. What he is doing is he's saying, you have the awesome power of free will. Believe it or not, you could actually choose an entire state of eternity that's premised on egocentricity, narcissism, self-worship, and domination of others. You could actually choose, because you have the capacity to do this, definitively and eternally, to be part of darkness so that you could get your narcissistic, ego jolt. You could actually choose a state of darkness so that you could actually dominate others and be cruel to others as a kind of, sick joy. But you can. You absolutely could choose that. Now, if you start going into the darkness deep enough, that's what Jesus is saying, right? Mm-hmm. You start going in the darkness deep enough, you start going into the domination, the self-worship, the egocentricity, the self-aggrandizement. You get deeper and deeper and deeper into it. It's an addiction. It becomes harder to break it. Oh, yes, the foreboding and the darkness begins to surround us. There's a profound loneliness that accompanies the domination of others. There's a profound darkness and emptiness when we look into the mirror, shaving or whatever we're doing. We're looking at ourselves and nothing is coming back. But we're getting the ego boost every day. We're putting down, everybody who's not, nearly at our level, right? And of course, at the end of the day, absolutely no concern, no heart for anybody else, right? But instead, a desire to just, pound down everybody in relation to ourselves so that we rise up in complete self-idolatry. Now you say, I would never do such a thing. It's never like one day the devil comes and says, hey, here's your choice. It's like we have the so-called Faustian legends, right? Mm-hmm. Where, Faust is, kind of sells his soul to the devil up front, right? And he says, for all this worldly mastery and all this stuff, you give me dominance, you give me self-aggrandizement, you give me, superiority over everybody, and okay, I'll sell my soul to you, right? That's the Faustian. That's not the way the devil really works, though. The devil really works by kind of getting you into the mode. What he wants you to do is really start liking self-aggrandizement more and more. just becomes really, you're into it. Oh, you may feel foreboding. You may feel loneliness. You may feel darkness. You may even feel the darkness of real evil kind of prodding around, around you, as if your companions in the darkness are waiting for you to join them, right? You might even feel that. Oh, but you can put it off. You can kind of, go out, take a jet to another place, go skiing, I don't know, find another divertimento, right? You could find something, to help you deal, with, you could, Arturo Fuente cigars, another couple of glasses of scotch. Don't worry, it's going to be okay, but just keep going. Isn't this a great life? You are superior. Reinforcement, right? This is the devil. The Holy Spirit is giving you the foreboding, right? You're joining companions of darkness. Don't do it, right? But of course, you're free. And of course, at the end of the day, right, the devil's always telling you, I'm a friend of humanity. I'm your friend. You remember that C.S. Lewis book, The Great Divorce, where the angel comes down and this guy who's taking a bus ride up from perimeters of heaven, and this angel comes down to meet him. And the lizard is perched on his shoulders, and the lizard says, I'm your friend. Don't let him touch me. That's a very bad man over there. Everything he does is just filled with pain. No. I've been your friend these many years. Don't do that. No, I'm your friend. Just keep me with you. And of course the angel just simply says, let me have him. And the guy goes, I just don't know you. And the lizards go, no. Right? And finally, of course, the guy goes, okay, you can take him. And with a scream of pain, because, right, the lizard got the talons dug into the guy's shoulder, and he pulls the lizard off, throws him on the ground. The lizard turns into a stallion, and the guy rides up to heaven. Now, the point, of course, is evil can become entrenched, but why would we want to wait that long? So the reason Jesus gives us these warnings about the wailing and the grinding of teeth of being left outside is because he's worried about it. He's not using the old fear tactic, convert or else. He has an unconditionally loving heart. He's worried about us. He's worried about the misuse of our free will. God doesn't send anyone to hell. We choose it. And when we do, God is incredibly and unconditionally saddened by that choice. There is nothing in God that could ever take glee in someone choosing hell. It's just the utter bitter, parent who loves their child, watch them walk into the darkness. No possible way. So at the end of the day, Jesus is saying these things because he's trying to tell us, you have an awesome power of freedom. Don't let it get away from you. Those 7 deadly sins, watch them, right? The 7 deadly sins are merely a condensation of the Sermon on the Mount. That's what they are. So he's just saying, watch out for drunkenness, drugs, and a life of gluttony. Watch out for it. Watch out for lust. You can get pulled in there and pulled so deeply that you're into every kind of darkness. And of course, the lust of that darkness is so narcissistic, and it's so deeply, egocentric that you don't even know you're in the narcissism. You're just literally in the darkness. So Jesus said, watch out for it. It's terribly seductive. Watch out for envy. So easy to get into envy and to want to overcome it, right? Watch out for pride. It's the most insidious of all. Watch out for anger. Anger is so horrible because, of course, anger leads every kind of spite and hate and so forth. You got to watch it all the time. These 7 deadly sins are, and of course, sloth too, right? Doing nothing. Spiritual, acedia, kind of I'm not going to do anything on my spiritual life because I'm just too busy with everything else, and I'm too, busy, distracting myself and entertaining myself to death, right? So literally to death. So the point, of course, is greed and envy and pride and anger and sloth and lust and gluttony, drunkenness, drugs, all in one package there. They're all killers. And Jesus is just saying, I'm begging you, Don't go so deep into the darkness that you're almost incapable of getting out. Of course you can get out at the last minute. All the workers who came at the 9th hour can still come in and get a full day's wage. Absolutely, one of Jesus' parables. But at the end of the day, Jesus is asking us, now's the time to get on the road. Now's the time to stay on the road. Now's the time to develop a prayer life. Even 2 decades of the rosary a day. Start there. Just the main thing is do something every day. You don't have to, right? If you can get to daily mass, maybe once a week, start there and do your 2 decades, during the day. And then if you start thinking about it, might get a Magnificat or something. Don't have to read all the Psalms. Read what you maybe read one Psalm a day, so you're doing something every day. Or maybe you can't get to the daily mass, but with the Magnificat you get these readings of the day. Just do the gospel reading, or do the St. Paul's reading, whatever it may be. Do something you can do. You don't have to become St. Teresa of Avila overnight. The main thing you want to do is do something you can do. Start with the 10-minute daily. I'm going to consecrate 10 minutes to God. Start there, and then keep faithful to that, and find a time when you can keep faithful to that. And at the end of the day, it's going to start transforming you. You're going to start being on the road. And when you start that prayer life, I'm not kidding you, those 7 deadly sins, you're going to start questioning yourself about them, because you're going to know that God's presence is real. I start my prayers every time, even if it's just a 10-minute prayer. I start off, Lord, I know you're here and I know you love me. Memorize it. Lord, I know you're here and I know you love me. Then do your prayers, whether it's the rosary, whether it's Magnificat, whatever it may be that you're going to do for your daily consecration time to the Lord. You watch. Eventually, you're going to yearn to have a sort of daily prayer.
This concludes part 2 of our discussion with Father Robert Spitzer, going inside the pages of God So Loved the World, Clues to Our Transcendent Destiny from the Revelation of Jesus. To learn more about this book or to obtain a copy, go to ignatius.com, the website for its publisher, Ignatius Press, or you can find it at any fine Catholic bookstore. To learn more about the work of the Magis Center, go to magiscenter.com. To hear and or to download this discussion along with many others, go to discerninghearts.com. This has been a production of discerninghearts.com. I'm your host, Kris McGregor. Join me next time for Inside the Pages, insights from today's most compelling authors.